Right. It's come to my attention that there's still question about unlicensed use of particular frequencies. I guess all the amateurs have all the spectrum, and those that don't want to take the test, which I understand, because it could be daunting for some, there's not enough frequencies. The question was, why not just give some frequencies to unlicensed users? Well, it's already there. Uh, you can use the little, what we used to call bubble pack radios, and these radios have 22 channels that are shared with GMRS. These are called Family Radio Service Radios, or FRS. Used to be where they were shared, and I think they may have gone back to maybe FRS only. You could get at a certain point in time. I have an example here somewhere of a 14 channel only. Here it is. This one happens to have the permanent antenna removed, but this was originally a 14 channel FRS radio. Two double A's. There's supposed to be a little antenna here. It's been removed. I guess some kid broke it off and I snagged it. I used to have one of these things, and kind of neat little radio. Then these came out. A lot of these came out, and you could use 22 channels instead of 14. Now, at this point, what they're using is a 2 watt or less radio, and the 467 channels, 467 megahertz channels for, I think they're channels 8 through 14 are only half a watt or were half a watt, but I think it's been upgraded to all channels are allowed to have 2 watts. This radio may not do that. At those 8 through 15 or 8 through 14 may only provide you still half a watt. So many people do not use those channels. They'll use something from 1 to 7 or 16 up through 22. Most time around here, as I hear travelers are using 21 or 22, and that's just the way that goes. I do understand that. It's very limited to have a small, low-powered radio. You can get them in a pack of 4 and communicate from car to car. I have heard some of these guys, for instance, they're working in the area and about 2 miles or so, of course, with an enhanced external antenna, not necessarily outdoor. I can hear them 2 miles away. If I had the antenna actually outdoors, probably get a better range. Now, being a licensed GMRS holder, I can operate repeaters or further on simplex or direct, and it's easier for me because I've already applied for and paid for the license. You can also use the multi-use radio service, which used to be, and this has got a leather pouch, by the way. This is what they look like without them, and used to be the business band service. Those 5 channels are deregulated to regular non-licensed users. It's a lot like CD radio, but it's VHF FM instead of low VHF AM. I borrowed a battery pack from an HTX 202 or 404, and you can put alkalines in this particular pack. It's a really tight fit. Probably should have opened it up before I inserted it on the radio. I've got 3 or 4 more of these around here somewhere. I know 2 are in use, and this one and maybe 1 more. Anyways, you could slide the bottom out and insert 6 batteries in there. Well, I was going to show you what this is. These old business band radios, see it's got the green dot on the back? They're usually packaged with 2 crystals. Well, I think they are. Don't quote me on this. You have to look at the manual, but you should have a transmit and a receive crystal. Same frequency, 154.600. And I think there's other crystals you can order. Of course, back then, in the 90s, you could get any crystal for any business band frequency that you were licensed for and insert those in the back. And that should be a 2, maybe 3 channel radio. I think the mobile radio, you could possibly have 3 channels. And that was probably programmed by DIP switches. And you'd select a certain number of combination of numbers there between 4 or 6 switches, something like that. And that would come up with the frequency for that radio. And you could program channels A and B as 2 channels and then turn it off, and some other function, combination of functions, you can turn it back on and program a 3rd channel. I don't know if you can do that with this, but these 2 channel radios are very good. 2 watts again. And that's what the wife and I use at the moment. You could also, which would put you way out of the range of the power requirements, is program a Part 90 commercial radio. And I've seen this done a lot for MURS. I don't necessarily advise it because they start out at 5 or 10 watts and go upwards of 40 or 50 watts. And that's just, that's a big no-no in some people's eyes. But it's been done. It's been done many a times. There's also, if you remember, 49 megahertz. These are unlicensed. And very short range, but for what it's worth, see, our building is probably 100 units, 4 floors, and cover range of maybe a few hundred yards, depending on how high you go up on the building. And it will allow you to communicate at least within the complex. And outside of that, nobody will hear what you're saying. Also, let's never forget the unlicensed service of CB radio. And as laughable as this is, actually it works pretty good. I've seen a lot of good tests. Most of these, I think, this is a 3-channel radio. And most of these came with CB channel 14. And this one happens to have channel 10 and channel 27. Channel 10 is A, channel 10 or channel B is 14, and channel C is 27. It works well for what it is. You can also plug in an external antenna. Some models you can plug in an external microphone. There's a newer one up there that does that, and it's 40 channels. It will take an external microphone, a hand mic, an external antenna, external power. You don't have to run 10 cell batteries. You don't have to run 10 alkalines or 8 or 9 with the dummy. I don't have any dummies at hand, but you have a dummy cell that goes in there and you can run alkalines. I've just run 10 alkalines or 10 lithium ions, actually. I was going to say nickel metal hydrides, but I don't think I have any available right now. I may have 12 of those for mixing with other radios, but I've done all that, charge the batteries whenever I want, and that's pretty good for also close communications, license free. It's a full 4-watt radio in AM, so it's pretty much the same thing in your hand. And you could take any one of these mobile radios, hold it in your hand, and plug a battery into it, outside antenna, and should already have a microphone. So it's basically just a really big HT, and some of them could be as 50 watts or more. But besides the fact, there's plenty of choices that you could use that are unlicensed that still work fairly well. And I've seen lots of people, I've heard lots of people go by here on the interstate quite a few times talking to each other with just little, where's that little rinky-dink radio? Did I put it away already? These little things, maybe, 2 watts isn't that bad. You could always take another radio, just like the other one. You just take the antenna off and you plug in, let's use this example right here, an external antenna, plug it in, and this is obviously just a jumper, but plug it into the antenna on top of your vehicle, and you could go down the road with an outside antenna. I've done this. I've done it with amateur radio, not this, but with the antenna on top of the car. There used to be, and you probably still find them, a window glass mount. It's actually a hook. It's not the kind you stick on the windshield and whatever. It's the kind that you put over the window in your car and you roll it back up, and on the outside, you pop on your antenna, and that's it. It kind of worked. The concept, I think it was more for scanners than it was for, transmitting with an amateur radio or whatever. And same concept. You could just pop this on and use an outside antenna and go down the road. There's even a speaker mic somewhere. A little unprepared. Going to jump box down here. Speaker mic. And you could just plug that in right at the top of this one. Or like many of the Radio Shack HTX 202s. And use that like a mobile radio. And it's still being done today. There's not a whole lot of folks that are doing it, but there are quite a few that are. So 22 channels for GMRS, FRS at 2 watts. You can get as many as 5 channels on 49 megahertz. You can get as many as 40 channels in the States on a particular CB band, although there are imports that are out there that allows a whole lot more than that. But with the CB radio, Not this one in particular, but you can transition from amplitude modulation to upper or lower sideband, and that more channels. But 4 watts, unless you're a knucklehead and decide want to amplify something like that. Of course, you can amplify just about anything. You can get amplifiers for these, and again, I don't recommend it. It's just like that Part 90 back there. You don't want to expose yourself. You don't want people to know exactly where you are by saying, "High power, here I am." But common practice is 2 watts. That's okay. I think it's good around the neighborhood, and it's been done many times. There's no reason why you should not at least use them from what they are as they come out of the box. 2 watts, a few channels, really a lot of channels. You don't have any access to repeaters, which really isn't a big deal because, if you can work other stations without the power, without repeaters, you really don't need them. That's just an addition to the hobbies, the services. It's a privilege to use them, but it's not a standard. It's not required unless you're in some kind of deep hole that you're at the bottom of the well or the back of the cave and you're trying to get out. I understand that, but when you're out in the open, even though you have obstructions around you, it's handy to have repeaters to help you get about. You don't necessarily need them. You can still work other stations, simplex or direct. So I hope that covers it. Just wanted to fill you guys in a little bit. It's a small portion of what I do here, and experimentation is a lot of fun. I suggest that you take the test, because as you take the test and you read the books or follow the hand crams or watch the videos, you do soak up and learn a bit. And if there's something that you can't quite figure out or hang with, believe me, I've done it from a book. I've had to go back several times and reread just to make sure that I understand. I've done the same thing with a commercial driver's license. I've had to go back and reread a couple different things just to make sure I understand it, because it will be on the test. And like getting your driver's license for a car or a big rig, flying a plane or helicopter, navigating a boat, operating a train, heavy equipment. If you're going to operate they have a license for forklifts. You have to have a license for a forklift? Really? Is that a safety thing? Anybody should be able to drive it. Yeah. Well, I do understand that you do have to have a license to operate a forklift. There are probably some decent safety reasons. Anybody can be an idiot on a piece of equipment, any piece of equipment, and cause problems for everybody. Probably part of the reason why they suggest you take the test to get a license, so that you don't have to be labeled as an idiot. At least they'll take you somewhat seriously once you attempted to pass the test, and then you learn as you go along. It's the same thing as trust me, it's the same thing as you're learning how to drive a truck. You learn on the job. There's people there next to you making sure you learn how to do the job just right, so you don't do it wrong when you're by yourself. So take the take the test. Just take the darn test. Spend a little money. You spend that much money in a Baofeng, double it, take the test, and move on. A lot of these guys take the test, they pass it, they pass several tests. They start with a Baofeng, a TID radio, Radioddity, TYT. It's okay. I started with, and they laughed at it for years, but I learned everything starting here and working my way up. So, and they're still darn good radios. I still like them more than I like the Baofengs. It's not as accessible. There's not as many accessories. There's not as many frequencies in the memories. Yeah. How many frequencies do you need? Some simplex, some repeater in the local area. And these days, when they tie you into the internet with a local repeater, unless you travel, like a lot of guys travel, and they got to have everything, or they got to scan the world with the repeater lists in their internet radio, that's fine. That's a good application. But here, in one place, nah. 13 channels is too many. 13 channels. And when you slide over to another monobander, to a 404, 13 channels is too many. You might need two. Just for analog. Then there's digital. I understand. You get into all that. There's more channels. There's DMR and all the other digital stuff. The Easy Wires, the Wires X, uh, Echo Link, so on and so forth. There's all your channels, but you got to start somewhere, and that's take the test. Or this is where you belong. If you want to get off the skateboard, take the test. Learn how to drive a truck, fly a plane, operate a train, drive a forklift, but you got to take the test. This is a great place to start. Every kid I've ever known skates, skateboard, bicycle, whatever. Believe you me, they eventually learn how to drive. And occasionally, on a rare occasion, you'll find a good driver. But don't hold your breath.